Myra had dreamed of getting married since high school. Her mother had a strong influence on this desire. No man ever stayed with her for more than 6 months, and that made the woman unhappy and taught her daughter that the best thing in life is a successful marriage. Myra had heard her mother's moral teachings since childhood about the importance of getting married, and that if you take care of your husband properly, you will live like a man with Christ behind your back. Being not yet an intelligent girl, she absorbed it like a sponge, so when at 19, Leo asked her to marry, the girl was over the moon. It seemed to Myra that she had reached the peak of her happiness. Leo was a little older than she was. He was 24. He met his wife-to-be in the park on a bench, sitting on which Myra was choking back tears and trying to wipe away paint-stained jeans. Their romance was swift and full of love. So when they announced their wedding, no one was surprised. It was on the way. One by one, Myra gave birth to 2 children and settled completely at home. Leo couldn't be happy. His wife did everything and more. Despite her fatigue, she diligently fulfilled the role of a good wife, as her mother insisted. Beloved home was always waiting for a delicious, hot dinner. The children immediately after his arrival went to bed, barely kissed my dad on the cheek. And afterwards the spouses would run to bed to indulge in comforts. The man relentlessly bragged to friends and colleagues of his other half. In conversations with them, Leo always called his wife his better half, and the men sincerely envied him. Almost all of them were waiting at home hysterical, which instead of warmth and love bestowed exclusively with lectures and reproaches. When her son turned 5 and her daughter 3, Myra had a chance to go to work, but for this it was necessary to get another crust. At one time, she graduated in economics, and after 6 months of work in the firm, she successfully went on maternity leave. After 5 years of endless maternity leave, the woman desperately wanted to go out. She had never admitted it to anyone, but in fact she was tired of family life. She was tired of being a servant in the house, of wiping snotty noses and smiling happily at Leo when he came home. She secretly followed the lives of her high school and university friends, who thoroughly enjoyed their youth, partying, and socializing with each other. Myra's socializing, on the other hand, was limited to the other moms on the playground, and Leo and the kids. Secretly from her husband, she still decided to take a course and go to work after it. It was there, in the training center, that she met him. Jake was teaching them accounting. Myra fell in love with one handsome man as soon as he entered the classroom. Jake also paid attention to the pretty Myra, who was sitting at the first desk, and listened to him avidly for the entire hour and a half. After class, he caught up with the student outside, and a conversation ensued. It was a Friday, and all weekend, Myra could not get away from the thought of the teacher. She herself did not realize how their romance began. Love swept over her, so that at times she forgot the existence of her husband and children. After her lover showed up, she forgot to cook dinner for the first time in years of marriage. When Leo returned home and saw nothing on the table but an empty candy cabinet, he was extremely surprised. His wife, who had actually been chatting with her lover on social media all day, referred to a terrible headache. That was the first bell. 3 weeks later, when her son got sick, Myra had to admit to her husband that she was going to school. The man was surprised and grumbled, but he accepted his wife's decision and asked his mother to help with the grandchildren. And while her mother-in-law started her and Leo's children, Paula drowned in Jake's arms. Suddenly, the changed behavior of his wife began to alarm Leo. Every now and then Myra could not cook dinner, began to oversleep in the morning, and as a consequence, did not have time to prepare her husband to work. Not to mention spousal duty. Leo forgot the last time he had touched his wife in bed. He was angry, but silent. Resentment boiled over in him. A good mood was out of the question. For the first time in their time together, Myra and Leo began to quarrel. "I forbid you to go to work," he shouted one day in the middle of a quarrel. "I am not your property." His wife parried him back. Never before had their house heard anything like that. Both of them had always judged their few friends who fought among themselves time and again. Until now, it had never occurred to them that there might be any discord between spouses. Their relationship was nauseatingly perfect. Study time was coming to an end. Jake and Myra realized that it would be much harder for them to see each other now. Several times, the woman brought up the issue of her leaving her husband and living together with Jake. But he didn't show any enthusiasm, and she didn't talk about it anymore. With her head, she knew that she couldn't count on anything, because they were only lovers, and, in fact, she knew absolutely nothing about her lover. Maybe he even had a family of his own. Of course, she didn't want to go back to her old life, with a husband she no longer loved. But she couldn't go anywhere from Leo either. She needed help with her children. There was no way she could raise them alone. She found out about her third pregnancy by accident and too late. Before going to work, she had a medical examination, at which the gynecologist solemnly congratulated her on the future addition to the family. Right in the chair, a woman fainted from this news. When she came to her senses and heard that the pregnancy could not be terminated, she sobbed in the corridor of the clinic for several hours. Everything frightened her in this situation, especially the fact that she was almost 100% sure that the future baby had nothing to do with her husband. For the rest of the week, the woman was tormented by the thought of having to admit her situation to both of her men. As she pondered what she should do, which one, Leo or Jake, to start confessing to, chance decided everything for her. When she came home from the hospital that day, Myra mechanically shoved the ultrasound results folder into the drawer along with all the other documents. Never before had it occurred to Leo to look there himself. Usually he always enlisted his wife's help. But after another argument, he was so angry with Myra that he didn't want to talk to her and reached into the ill-fated box himself. The first thing he saw were the ultrasound scans. He ran his eyes over the document describing the pregnancy. My husband smiled and wondered which one of the children belonged to the pictures of his daughter or son. And when he saw the date of the study, he was stunned. On stiff legs, he walked to his wife and handed her the sheet. "What is it?" he asked. Myra's eyes filled with tears. She had never been so frightened. I am pregnant," she mumbled. Leo suddenly smiled, picked her up, and held her tight against him. The caressing words poured out of him in torrents, and Myra continued to cry. Suddenly, a sob burst from her chest, and she cried out, "He is not yours. I do not love you." She broke free from her husband's embrace and huddled into the sofa cushions. The man slowly got to the meaning of what was said, and when finally he got it, he became angry, throwing himself at his wife with fists, but stopped in time. Myra sobbed harder than ever. Who is he?" shouted. The man pounded his fist on the wall. His wife told him everything. That night, Leo packed up and moved out of the apartment. Later, she told everything and Jake, but he, hearing about the situation of the mistress, pressed his lips and coldly said that the child he does not recognize. "Myra, I have a family," he tried to explain. "I have no use for your child. Get together with your husband. Raise it somehow." Myra was sickened by what she heard. This was something she had never imagined. Both men had left her, and her worst nightmare was beginning to come true. She was left alone, but with 3 children. The pain and resentment made her want to howl. The cheater couldn't imagine such an outcome and didn't want to accept her new life. Leo helped with the children as much as he could, but that was all Myra could count on. After the divorce, she stopped communicating with her. Even her own mother and the woman had to pull her children by herself. Coming home after work, she collapsed with exhaustion and cried into her pillow out of helplessness. Her fleeting passion burned out all the living and family around her, leaving her alone in the ashes of a once happy life. Share in the comments what you think about this situation and the behavior of the characters.